Happy birthday.
Morning all, and a very happy birthday to all my fellow
birthday
Jump
to
colleagues.
you.
If Mr. Sharp can stop singing happy birthday, because it's a real grating noise in my ear, but there you go. As you all know, we are a 1-year-old today, and this is our anniversary webinar. It's been a whirlwind over the last 12 months, and one of the biggest questions we get asked daily is, how is it going at Jump? So let me give you a little bit of insight on how 1 year has gone at Jump. From a zero start, we are now at 98 clients. And as I pulled the stats, I think we're now at 99, and potentially we might be just tipping over 100 today. We've delivered over 525 mentoring and coaching sessions to our clients, and that excludes all the boot camps that we've done, all the marketing forums we've done and run. We've delivered in excess of, I reckon, over 300 free one-to-one coaching sessions, including mentoring sessions and mental well-being sessions to our clients from there. We've created thousands of LinkedIn posts and some very odd videos very occasionally. We've worked tirelessly with the REC. We've delivered 12, maybe 11 sector sessions to them, helping them create and deliver more recruitment. We've helped them deliver and rebrand their new recruitment business training course. And we've also presented on numerous webinars and expos. And in fact, I think it's the 7th of October, we are going to be live in Birmingham at the NEC. So feel free to attend if you want to attend. There's free tickets flying around all over from there. But we are on at 3:30 in the afternoon. So by that time, it's the graveyard shift, but feel free to come along. So this is our 52nd webinar. I'd like to thank all our guests who've contributed so much. There's too many to mention, but we have had 670 individual business owners, leaders and recruiters attend our webinar, which meant as an overall audience, we've had over 3,787 people attend who've consumed a whopping 77,425 minutes of advice. I've been told that we've had a similar number of dad jokes from Paul Sharp, courtesy of the 70s. They want those jokes back. Paul Jacobs has mentioned, in my days at Alfred Marks, at least 51 consecutive weeks. Dave Pye, we've been that successful, has actually upgraded his Wi-Fi and retired the hamster from there. Heather has single-handedly increased the hair count of the group by over 100% to make the webinars more hair aesthetically pleasing. I've had to say that because he's banned me from saying, please don't come to me on that first question. I've been told I can't say that anymore.
You can't say that anymore.
And well, I've been camping quite a lot. No, I've actually come out with at least 51 strange and weird analogies that no one has actually ever heard before. And it's actually caused people to worry and question my sanity. I've also worried about that because they just pop into my head and they just come straight out. We've built and delivered over 20 websites for single clients. We've helped clients change, upgrade their tech stacks. We've given advice on legal, tax, etc., etc. And obviously we've been on tap 24/7 to the recruitment industry. To say we've been somewhat busy in our first year would be a little understatement. But I'm sure all the guys will agree, we've absolutely loved it. It's been a very hard place at some times. It's been a very fulfilling place at some times. We've learned, we've laughed, and we've cried with our clients. And we've cried on our own in the dark. But we're going to do it all again in the next 12 months, bigger and better, because without doubt, the biggest success that we've had is you, the audience. We've genuinely loved these webinars and we'll definitely be carrying on doing them. So without further ado, this week I'm joined by the whole gang. I've got 2 clients with us as well, Annette and Karen Deep. So I want to find out what has been the best piece of advice that we've heard from the team and the gang. So if you guys want to come on, feel free to come on at any time. If you want to just ask a question, just pop a question, we'll put you live on air and you can ask questions. So we're going to say, what is the best advice that we've given? So let's throw over to Paul Jacobs, because we know we can't stop him coming in anyway. So let's go straight to Paul straight away. Paul, give us your highlights of the last 52 weeks.
Oh my gosh, where do we begin? I mean, I think just making a decision to open a business up during the first few weeks of the lockdown was in itself quite a momentous thing. We all knew each other pretty well, and I think that was a brave decision to take, but it felt so liberating, I think, to make those decisions in those early days. It gave us real sense of purpose and direction. And to me personally, from a sort of a mental well-being perspective, having that objective to get something, to sort of birth something, to get something up and running at a time when the news, as we all recall, was about as miserable as anyone could ever remember. That felt fantastic. And I think being then able to speak to our clients, both the existing clients that we had already and the new people starting to work with us, was helpful, because we were all going through the same sort of level of pain, and we, at least I think, were able to talk about how positive we were feeling about the future. And you don't get much more positive in terms of your sentiments than launching a business during the worst downturn since the end of the Second World War. So I think we were preaching what we were actually doing, and I felt personally that helped a great deal with our credibility as a business. I can say with absolute sincerity that as much as I'd like to think and hope we have been inspiring for our clients, I would absolutely state that the people we've worked with have been equally inspiring from our perspective. You know, to see the level of spirit and fight and positive attitude from the people we've worked closely with at close quarters to the extent we have has been fantastic. You know, and here we are now in a position economically which we'd been predicting a year ago, 15 months ago, coming true. The fact is that the market has gone absolutely crazy. I'm with a client today. You can see I'm in a boardroom right now. They're, like every other client of ours, deluged with vacancies. Similar conversations around candidate shortages. Where do we find people from? Not only candidates for our clients, but people for our own business. You know, these are challenging issues, but what a positive position to be in comparison to where we were 15, 16 months ago, where lots of business owners were worried about whether they would survive. So great times ahead. My first year as a member of the Jump Board, incredibly memorable. I think a real turning point, even in my old age in my career. So there you go, Howard, as you said, I've got off and running. My voice is working perfectly well. I'm going to breathe for a second and let someone else speak.
So it's quite interesting there. What I love about Paul's answer to that question, it was the political answer that we get, because he didn't answer what was his favourite bit. He just answered something completely different, which is excellent from there. Mr. Pye, what about yourself?
I think for me, I think it's one of those things that what I've enjoyed most and what's been the best is that we have been on a journey with our clients and with the people that have joined us on these online discussions, rather than providing a service to them. I think when this whole crisis hit last year, nobody really knew what was going to happen. And we set up the business and we didn't have all the answers either. And what's been really great for me is to help be part of a community, I guess, that we've helped to build, and we've kind of done it together. We've offered our advice, but then in the chat rooms, lots of different people have contributed and said, well, what about this and what about that? And that sparked a discussion. And I kind of feel over the last 52 weeks that between us all, we've all learned something. We've all got something new, you know, almost every week, and we've done it together. And I think that sense of community and camaraderie, when we haven't been able to meet, it's all been done like this. I think it's been really good. And there was a saying at the very beginning of when this all started that we're all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. And I kind of feel that in the last 52 weeks, we've all been in the same boat. All the people that have attended these, that have joined in, that have contributed, we've all been in the same boat. We've all been learning together. So it's been a real privilege.
It's interesting when you sort of look at that, because I think you're right there, Dave. When I remember that first sort of week in lockdown when it all came out and it was all this was happening. You're probably right, that analogy. We're all in the same storm, but we're all in different boats. I think we've actually pulled that boat together, and whether we've got a big armada or whether we're in the same boat, yeah, we're all heading in the same direction, and everyone is sort of working together from that. Mr. Sharp, what about yourself? You're there with your nice bright yellow, vote Liberal Democrat badge on. You can't see it says happy birthday, though. I'm sure it does.
It's the raving loony party, isn't it? That's who it's representing. That's what it is.
Well, just to answer the question from Maureen, I'm not sat in my living room. I'm actually in a hotel, and that's not one of my waiters or housekeeping staff. It's actually the hotel staff that's just walked past. And just in case you doubt, it's actually my birthday badge, and this is my birthday hat, which I put on. I thought I'd just make a bit of an effort. I know the rest of you didn't bother, but don't take that personal.
That's the most covering you've had on your hair and head in about the last 30 years.
Well, I think one of my most memorable bits, I've got two memorable bits that stick in my head. One is you playing Van Halen on one of the webinars at Howard, and then getting told off by the LinkedIn police. I thought was hilarious. And the second memory that sticks in my mind is when we were all together a few months ago, and I sent Paul into the kitchen rather than the toilets, obviously on purpose, given the wrong directions. So that sticks in. In fact, that was in Paul Hooper's business, who's actually on the webinar. Just come back to me. So that's two memories that stick in my head. I think the last 12 months, for me personally, I think has been quite different to most of you guys, because you have all been doing this for a while. So, as I keep saying, I'm the Ringo Starr, the Stevie Nicks, the Baby Spice equivalent, joining you guys late on in the party and the journey. Clearly not as talented or as good looking, just before Paul Jacobs says anything. So the last 12 months for me have been very much about sharing and connecting with people and sharing all the knowledge and expertise that I've got. But it's also been about learning. So I think, mentoring for me is always about a two-way street. You give, but I don't think you should ever think you don't receive, because I think throughout that process, you equally learn an awful lot. And there's two people in particular that I put on my post this week have been inspirational for me in terms of helping me get up and running, two female business leaders. We don't name people unless they specifically want us to, because we're all about confidentiality when we talk to clients and customers. But without those people, and this is going to sound really cheesy, but without you four, who are on the webinar with me today, I would have struggled. Just like I think a lot of business owners struggle. So I think I would have struggled because I wouldn't have had a sounding board. I would have struggled because I didn't have somebody who was helping me stick to the plan. And I would have struggled because I wouldn't have had somebody to learn from. And I think as business leaders, it doesn't matter what you do, whether you run a consultancy business, whether you're running your own agency. I think we all need that sounding board. We all need a plan. We all need holding to account, and we need somebody to hold us up every now and then, and cheer us on from the sidelines, and motivate us to keep going during some of the tough times. And I think I probably fall into that camp. I'm very lucky that I've had you guys to sort of cheer me along and keep me straight. But as you know, I have gone through some tough periods and some tough times acclimatizing. But you've all helped me enormously. So a public thank you from me to you.
And just to make everybody aware that Paul Sharp let slip that he actually quoted to us, if you've read the Baby Spice autobiography, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. So all four of us looked at each other, Baby Spice autobiography, has she got one? But there you go.
Don't knock it till you've tried it.
Well, there you go. That's the next quote we'll put out there. Heather, obviously you were the last to join the group. You joined us sort of 4 or 5 months ago now. You've had a whirlwind sort of introduction into the world of owning your own business, etc. Give us your highlights.
I'd reiterate what Paul said. It's been a wonderful group of people to join, and setting out on this mission to decide to work for myself and come out of the big corporate world to join an organisation that was so clearly living its values. These webinars were about us demonstrating to the industry that we lived our values, because here you were, a group of 4 people genuinely sharing and bringing business leaders together. And it's really isolating, isn't it, being a business leader and not being able to, you're the leader. You're supposed to all the time look like you've got this, you've got it in control. And to have this, and it's a real cliche, isn't it, but safe space where business leaders could come together and genuinely know they were being supported. That was why I wanted to be part of it. And when Paul spoke to me about coming to join you, looking at what you were doing here and the way you were genuinely living your values, that was a big part of the reason for coming and joining you, was seeing that. And I think all of the businesses we work with, that's part of the reason they work with us too, is that we are so exposed and this is just who we are. So I love that. And one of the highlights for me was actually meeting Howard and Dave for the first time, because I'd spent time on webinars with you two guys, and I'd been working with you, and I was part of your business, and I'd made the decision to join you. And then we met months and months later for the first time face to face. And it was really odd, because I was kind of like, actually, I know these people. It wasn't like meeting you for the first time, even though we'd only ever met online. And so, I thought it was fantastic. You all made me so very welcome. And I'm really proud of what we're doing and the way we're supporting the leaders of the businesses that we're working with. They're amazing.
It's quite interesting how sort of aligned you start to get, because I remember when Dave and I first met, because again, when we started the business, Dave and I had never met, and the first opening line out of each was, so you have got legs then? So we'd only ever met from the chest upwards, and that was basically it. So yeah, it's a real interesting. So let's throw it open. We've got a couple of clients with us today who've been on probably more of the webinars than we care to mention, probably been on more webinars than all of us have been on the webinars from there. So let me throw it open to Kaz, a friend of mine, Karandeep Sahel, MD of Pivot Search, if I could say the words. You've been on quite a few, Kaz. You were famously called Karen by Phil Davis, which I said I wouldn't mention, but you know me, I will mention it. I spoke to Phil Davis the other day, actually, and he still mentions, how's Karen doing? And I said, he's doing really well. He's growing from there. give us your view of the webinars from a client point of view.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say happy birthday to you all. I think everything that it's hard to pick a single highlight, but obviously I think you mentioned it, that Phil Davis called me Karen, and what was the highlight of the year. But I think I found them really interesting because you've covered such a broad range of topics. And I think some of the topics as a business leader, you don't necessarily come to the forefront. You're not talking about rewriting the textbook. You're not talking about let's rip up how we do recruitment and completely change it. But you've broken it down into some topics, which are the fundamentals that you've covered, but then some topics which help you get that comparative advantage, that help you get the marginal gains that you're looking for. I think some of those topics are forgotten, neglected. Business owners either don't place an emphasis on them, or alternatively have thought that, do you know what, we're in a pandemic, these are things that are going to get me through it, when actually there are some core elements of what you've covered that are really, really important to getting it through. Things like, the mental health side of things has been great. And what I've always looked for and really enjoyed is always trying to take a key takeaway from what you've done. I think it's hard to digest and implement a whole webinar and come away and say, right, this is what I'm going to do. But there are always one or two snippets that make you think, actually, yeah, I need to implement that in some way. Or alternatively, I actually just need to remind people in the business. One of the recent ones was, the fundamental basics of, we're in a candidate scarce market. They are, and I don't think that across the industry we've seen that for quite some time, but there are fundamental basics that we should be doing, that you reminded us what we should be doing, that I think as business leaders we might not place emphasis on, but most importantly, if we're not reminding our consultants aren't doing it. And I think that's the great thing, that you've got a broad and varied range of opinions and voices giving different advice, and you're able to take it. And I think the other bit is the impartiality, that if you can always bring together business leaders and you'll talk generically about things, but nobody really wants to give away the secrets. If they think that they're onto a bit of a golden nugget, they're not going to talk about it. Whereas you've got a vested interest in actually sharing and imparting your knowledge with a view to people going, actually, Jump can help us on a more one-to-one basis potentially down the line. I think that's been really enjoyable. There are loads of different bits. That the marketing side, I think, was really, really interesting. We're very marketing led as a business, but it's still opened up chains of thought, thinking, well, yeah, we do marketing in certain ways, but do we do this? Do we do that? Consultant attraction. Everybody wants experienced consultants. What can you do to attract people? How can you have a good tech stack? the answer isn't just let's get every bit of technology. It's actually, reminding people, well, it's about actually what you choose to get out of it. So I've really enjoyed it. And, I've enjoyed being able to implement it and relate back. Obviously, Howard's done some work with members of the team, and I can now relate it back to this is Howard Greenwood. They've finally met Howard. So that's been great. But no, be certainly informative, insightful, and useful. I think a lot of us sit on webinars where we sit there, listen to a lot, and go away and go, well, maybe I'll do it. But there are genuine bits where you've been motivated to go away and do it. And the guest speakers, having people come in and offer a different perspective, people who don't work in recruitment, I think is invaluable, because there's so much that you can take from other areas. I'm a big cricketer and golfer. Phil Davies one was unbelievable for me to just take a step back and look at, well, there's a lot you can take from professional sport that applies in business.
So it's really interesting, because we sort of talk about some of the things that you've picked up, and that's the bit that we like, that we have such a diverse set of people on these webinars, and we have such diverse backgrounds, and giving that information, because recruitment leaders, as you know, you only know what you know, and it's what you don't know that probably is holding you back. And the fact that you don't know it is the problem. Yeah. But having someone highlight that to you suddenly opens up, and lots of people on this webinars have been in recruitment for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and we still get emails from people saying I've been in the market for 30 years. That bit there, I have never even thought about that. I never even thought about implementing that into my business. How can you help us? And it's those type of things that you start to sort of realize, is that between the five of us, we have so much experience. What can we give and what can we help? And that's the bit that we really love, giving all this away free, because that's what it's about. And that sharing the recruitment industry to make sharing snippets of how the recruitment industry can grow and scale makes the recruitment industry as a whole stronger. And that's what we want. We want a strong, tight recruitment industry that can warrant its place in the marketplace and not be chipped at as it is constantly at. Annette, before I come to you, I was going to say you're on mute there, but I'll bring you off mute. That's really good. Again, you've been with us, an awful long time. You've sat on probably all of our webinars, if not most of our webinars from there. So we thank you massively for your support. It's been hugely appreciated. So again, same question to you. What are your takeaways? What do you think of the webinars?
Yeah, thanks, Howard, and thanks to all the team. And I'll just reiterate what Karandeep said and say, happy birthday and congratulations to you all. It's certainly been a whirlwind of a year, and obviously, prior to that with your previous company as well. And I was fortunate enough to sit on those webinars. It would be very, very difficult for me to pick out one particular thing because there are so many pluses, all of them actually. I think I haven't come away ever from any of your webinars and not learned something. As some of you know, I've been in recruitment for 20 plus years, only at G2 Legal, never had any experience in any other recruitment company. So from my perspective and being a business owner at G2 Legal, I've only really had a very internal perspective of our business, a sort of introspection, if you like. And I think that what the Jump webinars and the Jump team have given me and to all my team is that external perspective, looking at what other recruitment companies do, best practices in the market, taking on board the wealth of experience that you have clearly all got. And, I have to say, I'm delighted to see that Heather's joined the team as well, and even trying to even it up on the gender balance there, Heather.
Thanks, Annette. I do my best.
And also with hair.
Yes.
Big ones.
I've almost got them to stop saying guys.
Yeah, well, that was going to be, I think that was one of the things that was a standout with the Paul Jacobs gaffe in the D&I webinar, but I did promise him that I wouldn't mention that.
Thanks so much, Annette. Thank you.
But I think, you know, look, this last year, 16, 18 months has been absolutely, well, tragic in some instances for many people and their families and their businesses. But I think what you have all given me is a kind of sense of security, really, and a sense of community, and a sense that we're going to be all right if we all stick together, and if we all you know, look at our practices and make sure that we're doing the best that we can possibly do for our candidates, for our clients, and most importantly, our greatest asset of all in any business, our employees, then we will be okay. And it's just how we've been able to sort of navigate that. And as I say, I've never had a business mentor or coach in the past. Like many people, I just fell into recruitment. So it's opened up my eyes and my world of recruitment massively, and enabled me to now put into place my strategies for the future for my company and for my people with regards to succession planning and how we grow the business and how we scale up. So I suppose it's just a very long-winded way of saying thank you to all of you. You know, it's been an absolute pleasure, and you've been a tremendous help, and I hope it continues for many more birthdays and anniversaries as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Annette.
Thanks, Annette.
Thanks, Annette.
Thank you.
Such kind words.
And
I think
before you move on, Howard, can I just add to all of that, because this is about you. Because honestly, I took over and hosted for the 4 D&I webinars, and I didn't, until I did that, I don't think I had appreciated how difficult it is and what an amazing job Howard does in hosting these webinars.
I'm gonna cry now. I'm gonna cry.
Yeah, well, honestly, Howard, thank you. There is so much work that goes in. I know we were joking when we were starting about, you know, it's all off the cuff and we don't prep. You have to prep. And Howard works really hard to prep this and to keep it going and to keep that conversation flowing. And, you know, well done you, Howard, and thank you for doing that, because you do an amazing job.
Thanks. I think some of the things that come out of these webinars, it's the hidden things that people don't see that I think motivates us the most. And I think all of us in Jump have probably had this at one point in the last 12 months. I remember coming off one webinar and a client called us directly after the webinar and then spent an hour in a flood of tears about her business and what was happening with her business. And it was spending that hour and then an extra hour on top of that with this lady, trying to, you know, refocus, reshape and energize this person. And that was the power that we've got from these type of webinars. Yeah, and it saved one of my clients. Yeah, I'm not going to mention her name because she'll throw things at me when I see her next. You know, I said, "Do you want to come on and speak?" And she said, "No, I can't. But you know, you've put so much pressure on me. I'm going to take a day off." Well, she's actually on the webinar today in the garden now, still refusing to come on. But this is the fact that she's actually come on because she didn't want to miss what we have to say. It's that sort of gives me a huge pride of what we've actually achieved and creating that community. And yeah, I'm sure Dave and Paul Jacobs will remember this. When we first started the very, very early embryonic days of Jump, we had a really heated debate over the word social, because I said I wanted to create a really good social environment, and people said they had different connotations on the word social and how that word meant. And I think we have really created a really good social environment for recruiters where they feel safe to come on and they feel safe that they're going to be treated well. They're going to get really good advice that isn't textbook, it is real life that's come from our experiences, and we're looking at how we can sort of implement that with other people. I think that is the best that we can do and that we can deliver. And to me, that's the bit that makes us really, really proud. And I think some of the things that we gave, I think the one that stand out moment for me was the Richard Brady sessions, where we did the 10 tangible and the 10 intangible assets. And it was, that got so much commentary about, we'd never even thought about these type of things, sort of going back to what both Annette and what Karen was saying regarding you only know what you know. And it was those sort of things that really stood out. And I think, we've had some great laughs on here. And yes, the Paul Jacobs gaffe was really, just one of those things.
Bad, terrible.
But it's just one of those things. And I think what it actually says to us is that, if you look at DE&i, they were probably our worst attended webinars for whatever reason. However, yeah, exactly. and you're right, Annette. You're right, absolutely right. But what it actually said was those single words like, guys, I had a flood of emails from, lady clients saying, well, I call all my ladies guys, etc. But it's getting part of that and understanding that we should be able to make these type of gaffes, and it's how we learn from them further on and what have you. And I think that's what it's created. It's created a learning environment, and that's the bit that really sort of motivates me, creating a learning environment. So let's flip this. We've got 15 sort of minutes to go. So let's flip this back in. You started this, I think, Annette, you started this with your comment about, the Paul Jacobs. Let's talk about what's been the most funniest, the most enlightening comment that's come out of the webinars and what they've been. So let's flip it around. So if anyone who wants to sort of jump straight in there, let's flip that in.
I remember we talked in one webinar, Howard, and it was actually when things were still really very challenging, and before we got to this, and we started to talk about centering the candidate in all of your processes. And I've learned so much from all of you, but that whole thing about being all about the candidate and all about the candidate experience just really resonated for me at the time in the context of what we were talking about, and that's kind of really stuck in my mind.
Yeah, I would add, I think for me, especially in the early days, when we were engaging people in the subject of mental health and welfare, and I think it had great resonance for every one of us at that point. No matter how, we were very vocally talking about being brave and moving forward, and not worrying about things you can't control, just focusing on the things you could control. It would have been a rather odd human being not to have been feeling rather displaced and vulnerable at that point, and everybody felt that. And I think getting some of the experts we brought on at the time to talk about mental health and looking after ourselves, particularly as business owners, we were focusing on looking after our people, many of whom were furloughed at that point. But I think we were turning the focus on the people that were running the businesses and saying, look, you're putting a lot of effort into taking care of your people, but who's looking after you? And are you looking after yourself correctly? And I mean, just to pick that point up, for me, those were very much the highlights, because most of us were feeling, to a greater or lesser degree, vulnerable and unsure about our futures. And I personally thought that some of those particular webinars were, in many respects, the best that we did during that period. It's interesting listening to everybody just now. The one thing that's consistent from everyone's comments was the sense of community, the feeling that we were in it together, that we are in it together. What we've been through is quite extraordinary. And in fact, we're still going through extraordinary times. What we're going through now is a different phase of this extraordinary time. And this issue of looking after one another, taking care of one another, coming on to this webinar every week, seeing this as a sort of safe place to talk and share ideas and thoughts is something that I personally think is very relevant and needs to continue. I don't know what normal is any longer. I don't think anybody knows what normal is any longer. And just so long as things remain fairly abnormal, and frankly, I can't see an end to that anytime soon, I think that this sense of community, linking arms, taking care of each other through this method and others that we work with, is going to remain a very relevant and important part of the Jump philosophy going forward.
Paul, just on that, and as Karen Deep was talking earlier, what I thought just going through my head when he said about, not wanting to share things for fear of other people starting to adopt or take ideas. There's 38,000 agencies in the UK. How good would it be to have a community of 50 or 60 that actually did share those things because we were all in different geographies or different markets, I think that would be exceptionally powerful, personally. Just a thought, throwing it out there.
I completely agree with you, Paul. I think that there is this attitude in our industry that if I tell you something I'm doing, then you're going to do it, and that might harm me, which is complete. It's pretty much nonsense, because our industry is built on relationships. If I tell you my client base, I can give you the names of the clients. It doesn't give you access to those people just because you know who I'm providing perms to or contractors. So sharing ideas, techniques, and tips. I agree with you completely. I think it's a very positive thing. And I'll go one step further and say that I think a general life lesson anyway is that if you give of yourself and you give to others, you get it back 10 times over. So it's an important life lesson, and that, I suppose, underpins everything we've been trying to achieve over the last 12 months with the help of our fantastic the fantastic people that listen to our webinars and our wonderful clients. I think we've developed this very early community. What I feel what we want to do now, and you said it really well, Paul, is we've got our core listeners every week. They fluctuate in terms of numbers. We've had some very high attendances. I'd love to see that 10 times more, 100 times more. Not because we're greedy as Jump, but because what we're sharing between us is worth listening to.
I think just on that point, sorry, Paul, I think it's more than it having a purpose. What you have been prepared to do is stick your head above the parapet and talk about things that people will raise an eyebrow. I think one of the biggest challenges with recruitment is, in some ways, it's maintained its stereotype, its archaicness, and I think there's a lot of barrier to change and evolution. I think even pre-pandemic, if you talked about mental health and you talked about equality, diversity, inclusion, things like that, people would just go, it's a load of rubbish. I don't need that in my business. And I think that what you are starting to do by talking about it is making people start to think, I have to take notice, or I'm going to get left behind. That, I guess, that goes back to the whole bringing in things from outside the box.
I think saying that, you're absolutely right. And recruitment is one of these marketplaces that is very slow to adapt and to adopt new things coming through. And I can give you the prime example, because Paul Jacobs will back me up on this, that about 3 or 4 years ago, I was up in Scotland delivering a speech on video technology and almost got laughed out of the room. Now, one of Paul's clients is the lady who attended that speech and was one of the people saying, video, it's never going to take off. It's never going to be a thing. And I said at that time, that digital wave is coming. You have a choice to ride the wave or sit on the beach and get washed away by the wave. Now everyone's riding that wave. It's been forced upon us, but everyone's suddenly see the change of recruitment and change what's going on. And I think that sharing of ideas is hugely important for the evolution of recruitment, because it's not, Darwin didn't say the survival of the fittest. He said those who adapt, will survive. Yeah. And that is what we should be able to do, is we need to adapt. And that's what we haven't done enough of. We haven't adapted. If you look at most recruitment, we walk into lots of recruitment agencies. We've done 520 odd sessions. I could almost probably say 90% of the recruitment agencies, the methodology is very, very similar. 10% will be very, very different from there. And that's what we've got to understand, is that we do the similar type of process. It's just like, the difference between an Audi, a BMW, a Ford, a Vauxhall, etc. So we do the same product, but in a different coat. And that's how we make that coat better, that coat shiny, that different thing, that leading edge thing that you can suddenly bring out. And that's what we've got to be more innovative about, I think. And that's what I think these webinars, and I think that's what lockdown has brought to us, that ability to adapt and innovate, if I could say the word.
Yeah, and I would say, Howard, the top of that list is your innovative analogies, because here is yet another one. And I'm beginning to wonder about you, really.
You have got a book of analogies coming out, Howard, haven't you, soon? 2000, in time for Christmas?
Should be. Absolutely should do that.
Bestseller.
you know, I get so much stick from analogies, and I do believe Annette thought you did say, I wonder what you were going to say at one point. I wonder where was that one was going.
There have been a few just slightly dubious ones, Howard.
Slightly dubious ones. But there you go. But yeah, it's been authentic. That is how I am. So yeah, if you want a good analogy, then book me in for an hour. Yeah.
Howard, I agree with you there, and I think, look, running a business, any business, and a recruitment business can be very isolating sometimes, and yet it's a bit strange that we're all doing the same thing. We're all doing the same job and all working for the same goals, and yet we're reluctant to share. And I think that is one of the real big pluses of the Jump team and the advice and the information that you've provided over the year, is that you've been sharing your expertise and your experience, which is huge. And also, I think that with the community that have been listening into the webinars as well, you've had lots of good input on the chat, with people agreeing with the speakers, the external speakers and the attendees. And, I've taken a lot from my counterparts in the other recruitment companies of the attendees as well. And also the other point is that I think two words that have come out of this pandemic and have been used over and over again, and they may have been hijacked a bit, but I think are very relevant. The first one is authentic. Be authentic and be your authentic self. And the second one is empathy. And I do think that a positive out of this pandemic is that everybody is more empathetic, and I think that has trickled down and cascaded through into our businesses. And all of the subjects that you've had with your speakers, you've mentioned, of course, with the well-being, particularly relevant throughout this period, and the DE&I piece, which is always relevant, and loads of others, have been really, really highlighted through all of your webinars, and for the good. I think we're all better for it. So again, just thank you for that.
Howard, I've just got one point, or one ask really, off the back of what Annette said and Paul and you. And I know Dave is probably thinking this because he's always asking the question, and that is, if there is one thing you want us to do more of for the next 12 months, or less of, or if there are certain subject areas that you'd like us to cover, or if you've got some thoughts about how we might go about sharing more information as a community, we are absolutely all ears.
Yeah.
So, sometimes we, think about the things that we think need to be talked about and communicated and debated, but we don't always get it right. So the more input from, people that are listening, the more you'll guide us and nudge us to make these sessions an even bigger success going forward. So any feedback to any one of us would be really greatly appreciated.
Great point, well made, Paul.
I think it's right there, Paul. And I think I remember when having that first meeting in the first couple of weeks, and they said, well, we're going to run these every week, or is it going to be every month or every quarter? And we all said, no, it's going to be every week. And someone said, well, what are we going to talk about every week? And we said, believe you and me, we will be able to talk about something every week. Not a problem. So anything that we can get hold of, anything, and this is the bit that we want to sort of really hit is what's happening now, what's the needs now for every recruitment agency. So if you look at the last 4 weeks, we've done stuff on the candidate shortage, recruitment, etc. That's what we want to try and tackle, is the things that are happening now in the marketplace. So yes, we plan what we're going to talk about, but we don't plan them that far in advance, because we want to actually hit what's live now and what's working now. So as we start to sort of wind up, Dave, anything that you want to add? You've been reasonably quiet as always, or now you've got your mouse back.
I mean, one of the things that I've loved about our industry is the fun that we have. We work hard, we work fantastically hard on behalf of clients and candidates, but it has always been fun. And I think, given what we've all been through in these last 18 months, the thing I've most enjoyed about these webinars and the chats is the fun that we've had. It has been a genuine pleasure to be part of it, to engage in the chat box, to talk with people afterwards as well. And I think we've been able to maintain that. And for me personally, that's one of the reasons why I love the sector that we work in.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I've encouraged my son to join it. Like a fool, he agreed with me, and he did. So you know,
he's had his first placement.
Yes, he has. He's done his first placement after 4 weeks. I did remind him it took me 9 weeks to do my first placement. So clearly he's way ahead of me already. But we've just had a lot of fun. And for me, that's been a really vital part in a difficult 18 months for us as a country, and for our candidates and our clients. It's been a tough time. So this has been a little bit of education. And I think the purpose of why we set it up, we've always honoured that purpose, and we've tried to live through that. So it's been really good.
I think it was Dave that you said in one of the early meetings that you didn't care whether one person turned up or a million turned up. If that one person turned up and we could help and change that person for the better, then it was worthwhile doing the webinars. And I think that's the mentality that we've had all the way through that. I'd like to say that we've just achieved one milestone today. That I've actually got the last slide up before we've actually finished the webinar, before I've logged it off and gone, I forgot the last slide again. So the last slide is up this time from there. So, you know, Kaz and Annette, thank you very much for being part of today's webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much for having us. And best of luck for next year.
Thank you. And thanks for all your attendance. Heather, Dave, Paul and Paul, I'd like to thank you to making my job easier for hosting this, because I always know there's never going to be a quiet moment where I'm wondering who's going to speak, because someone's always got something to say and always going to jump in. So it does make the job a little bit easier. As Heather's found out, what happens though all the time when you've planned a load of questions and question 1 comes out and then someone answers question 3, 4 and 5 all at the same time, you think, oh my God, I've got no more questions left, but we have to make them up on the spot. So it is a little bit hair raising at that stage, which I haven't got anymore. So that's the problem. But next week we'll be back. We'll be back with a completely new topic, hitting the recruitment ground running as we should be. We're going to look at how we can move forward in the marketplace. So as Paul has rightly said, if you have comments, then make them to us. We will then create a webinar around that, and we'll use our industry knowledge, our influence in the marketplace. And if we have to bring an outside expert in, we will, to make sure that we cover that topic properly to ensure that you, our audience, can move forward. So I'd like to say happy birthday to everybody. I'd like to say thank you very much for attending. For those that have attended, lows and lows, Karen D, Paul, Deborah, etc., etc., etc. Again, I'd like to thank you because you've made our job so much easier, and we look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you very much.
Happy birthday, guys.
Thank you. Happy birthday.
Bye.
Thanks again for joining us. Thank you.
Birthday to